This episode actually starts out pretty strong. In fact, I would say it started out way too strong. It starts out with the asshole guy sleeping in the bus, and we see the scene of the lady monster trying to get into the bus from the trailer. This scene goes by insanely quick, way faster than I would have ever expected it to. At the same time that's going on, Jade wakes up in a daze and he holds up the photograph of the old man and Victor. Then he looks up and boom, he sees that same old guy standing at the doorway to his bedroom. The old guy opens the book with the symbol, and the symbol itself starts bleeding on the book. So Jade gets up and he tries to catch the old guy, but by the time he gets to the doorway, the old guy, he's already gone. He's disappeared. And Jade has a fucking meltdown because of all of that. Anyways, the next day starts up and it seems like Jade has been trying to recreate the symbol using bottles from the bar. It makes you wonder if the symbol itself can be used for something like summoning a demon or a steal from the monsters or a protective rune of some kind. It's immediately after that scene that Victor comes into the bar and tells Jade, "You don't look good." Jade tells him to fuck off, and Victor almost ends up leaving, but Jade tells him not to, and Victor offers to tell him what he knows about the symbol and the man in the photo, as long as Jade agrees to play the violin to him. Victor ends up taking Jade to some random place in the woods, and on the way there, he says something that's very interesting. And what he says is the trees are changing. And this is something Victor talked about in season one as well. So it definitely seems like it's going to be important in the future. Maybe at some point in time, the trees will close up around the town itself to try to kill everybody in there. That would be crazy if that happens. Maybe that's what happened to the hotel that's no longer in the town. Anyways, Victor takes Jade to a junkyard that's in the woods, and it turns out that this is where all the cars from the people who've been coming here for decades end up, and that's because Victor takes all the cars and he puts them in this place in the woods because he gets tired of looking at all these cars that belong to dead people. What Vic says next is 100% more interesting. He tells us that beyond the rocks, there's a lot more cars there, but those ones were here before he got to Fromland. This means that Fromland and this junkyard existed even before Victor himself got here. And that goes against one of the most popular theories, which says that Victor built the town without realizing from his own trauma using some type of Dr. Manhattan or Scarlet Witch type of abilities, but this dialogue, it heavily implies that this place was here long before him. And considering the lowest year at the lighthouse in Tabitha's vision was 1506, this place was here long before him. Victor apologizes about getting angry and he takes Jade to a car in the junkyard. We find out that this car belonged to his mother. Victor tells us that when he was afraid, his mother would play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the violin so that he wouldn't be afraid. He says that when they hid at night and he'd hear the people screaming, his mother used to tell him to think about the twinkling stars so he wouldn't be afraid anymore. Victor almost cries thinking about her when Jade is playing the violin because, let's be honest, it's probably been many decades since he heard that song. Victor explains that the guy's name in the photograph was Christopher, and he shows Jade which car belonged to that guy. Victor tells us that Christopher was good at making people laugh. He was kind of a jokester and that he was special because it was really hard to make people happy back then. So everybody liked him a lot. Victor starts acting crazy like he did in the cave, and he tells us one day, everything changed. Christopher changed. He didn't smile anymore. He didn't make people laugh anymore. Then everyone died. And it was around the same time when Christopher started seeing the symbol. Victor tells us one day his mother told him to hide somewhere that Christopher didn't know about. And when he woke up the next morning, everyone was dead. Victor says there are things in Fromland that make people do bad things, And that's something that goes back to what Ethan said. There's bad symbols and there's good symbols, and we don't know which the symbol in the book is. It could be bad or a good symbol, we don't know. We see Christy and Marielle at their room in the hospital, and they're having fun times together. Mary says she has a surprise for Christy, and it's a t-shirt. For whatever reason, Christy really likes this t-shirt, but we don't really know the significance yet. Marielle ends up giving Christy a haircut, and she really likes it, you know. Shortly afterwards, Tilly shows up and says she was looking for Christy. Tilly gives us some morphine, and she tells us that she was diagnosed about a month ago. And when she says that, we see that Mary having a subtle reaction in the background. Tilly thinks it's better for Christy to have it because if she became ill, she won't be able to use it by herself anyways. She ends up telling Christy that they're better off in the hospital because everybody in town is angry because Sarah is back. Christy ends up running to go to the town to confront her because she feels guilty for the way she encouraged Sarah to kill Ethan, even though it was by accident. Marielle tells her that it's not her fault and that she's there for her. Anyways, a short while later, we see Marielle boosting herself from the morphine that Tilly brought to the hospital, which is dumb as hell because if they had morphine when Kelly was rotted to the tree, they probably could have saved her by using it. Morphine is useful as fuck, especially in a place like this. But hey, this idiot is wasting all of it by getting high. Boyd is sleeping in the church and he hears a lot of banging on the door. Sarah shows up from the basement and he tells her to get back downstairs. Tabitha and Jim barge into the church and Boyd tries telling them that Sarah's important, that Sarah hears voices, yada yada yada, but Kenny already told them all of that. And the only thing that matters to them is that she's a murderer. She killed Kenny's dad, she killed the nurse, she killed Toby, and she almost killed Ethan. Jim asks Boyd, what about his rules? Surely a murderer deserves the box. Boyd says things have changed. Things have changed because Jim and Jade put a tower on Colony House, then telling everybody that they're going home, and now everybody's looking to Boyd to give them the answers. Boyd says they don't have enough resources for everyone because of the bus and the house fell for no fucking reason. And if Sarah can explain what's going on here, she needs to stay alive. Sarah shows up from the basement and Tabitha confronts her. Tabitha tells her if she ever comes close to her family, that Tabitha will kill her herself. Anyways, Sarah starts talking suicidal after they leave because she wants to be put in the box. But Boyd says he's gonna talk to Donna. Donna tells Boyd, by the rules Boyd himself created, that a fucking murderer obviously deserves to be put in the box. Donna tells Boyd he said he would come back with answers, but he brought a murderer instead. And she's, yeah. Boyd tells her the voices told Sarah things that she couldn't have possibly known. Donna tells Boyd that faith in him was the only thing this town still had going for it. Donna says she doesn't think Boyd's reluctance to kill Sarah is about leaving Fromland, but rather about his desire that he would have done more to save Iron Abbey back when she went crazy. That Boyd wishes he did more to help her, more to fix her. Boyd asks Donna if she's gonna have his back or not, and she doesn't give a straight answer. Sarah ends up going back to the house she used to live in, and she walks in and sees a coat that used to belong to Nathan. She picks it up and starts smelling it, but then some guy comes down and sees her holding the coat, and the people at the house tell her to get the fuck out because she's a murderer, bro. Um, Sarah says she's looking for something, an ornament that her and Nathan used to keep in the house. The guy tells her to check the storage at the diner because that's where they took all of her stuff because it was creepy for them to keep it at the house. And she needs to get out the house. Sarah says, please, but then the girl tells her again, get the fuck out. But yeah, she is a murderer, so it's really hard to feel bad either way for me because we still don't know if the voices she was listening to are on our side or not. Tabitha and Jim get back to their house and they find Julie trying to get Ethan to open the door, but he doesn't want to do it. Ethan's become depressed because he had them talking about Sarah the previous night. Ethan opens the door and says he wants to talk to Sarah. Tabitha ends up saying that there's no way she's letting Ethan around the woman who tried to kill him. Jim says the doctors said they should let Ethan lead sometimes and they have to let him walk through things on his own when he asks for it. Jim says it's fine because he'll be there with him. Tabitha wants to go with the two of them, but Jim says it's fine because he'll be with him. Ethan says when you're on a quest, the only way to take the monster's power away is to face them head on, which, like many things Ethan ends up saying, is very interesting. It's an interesting idea. Jim and Ethan go to Sarah and they find her staring at the diner, and Jim says there's something Ethan wants to say to her. Ethan says everyone thought she died in the woods, but she lived, and only monsters can live in the woods. He thought they were friends, but they're not, because she's a monster and he's not afraid of her. Sarah just accepts it. Jim takes Ethan back to the house, and Tabitha and Julie come out to greet them. Ethan says he's not afraid anymore, and Julie does a secret handshake with him and she asks him to peel potatoes, but Ethan really doesn't want to do it, but he goes anyways. Jim says he never expected such powerful life lessons from the Kromanako. Tabitha stares at the Jenga blocks Ethan made while she's with Jim, and she seemingly has an interesting revelation. Sarah ends up going to the church, and Elgin, of all people, shows up. Elgin tells her he's from the bus, and he asks her if she lives in town because he never saw her at Colony House. Elgin says he would have definitely noticed someone like her. Sarah says right now she lives in the church. Elgin says he goes to see his grandma every weekend, and that's why he was on the bus. And when he sees her, they make crochet owls together, and it's fun for them to do it. Sarah says she was a dog when she was a kid and they'd buy little Christmas ornaments from a dollar store in the town. She says Nathan kept one even after all these years to remind him of the simpler days. Elgin asks her if Nathan is here in Fromland, and Sarah says he was. She wants to get the ornament back, but the person who has it won't want to give it back. Elgin asks to get it back for her, and Sarah says he's sweet. Sarah says it's a nice idea that God forgives any bad thing you do. Elgin says he doesn't believe that that's a reasonable take and asks if she thinks she's done anything that needs forgiving. Sarah tells him that she killed her brother, and Elgin gets shook up and he ends up leaving the church after that conversation. And I'll be honest, I don't know what the writers are doing with the Elgin because last episode, Julie was clearly showing interest in him, and in this one, they have him showing interest in Sarah, and Sarah is reciprocating it. It's almost like they're trying to have two different love triangles at the same time. We got Julie, Elgin, and Sarah, and then Kenny, Christy, and Mariel. Like, what the fuck are they even doing? Are they looking for maximum drama or will they just sweep it under the rug like what's happening with Kenny and Christy? I don't even know. Sarah ends up going to the diner and Mother Chen sees her and she's obviously shook because that's the woman who killed her husband and all these people. Anyways, Sarah says she's sorry, but Mother Chen just tells her she knows why she's here. Mother Chen says she took care of Sarah and in return, she killed her husband, putting hate in her heart in the process. Mother Chen gives her all of the items from their house and tells her to leave and never come to the diner again. And she starts crying and has a breakdown. Sarah ends up leaving the diner, and Kenny sees her while she's trying to walk away. Kenny starts bullying her and grabs the box and pours everything that's inside onto the ground. Kenny grabs the ornament because he sees Sarah going for it and he asks her if it's important to her and he throws it at the diner and it completely breaks. Sarah starts crying and Kenny says if she ever comes near his mother again, he will drag her psycho ass into the fucking box by himself. And Elgin was just watching the entire thing, and he goes over to help her put the things back into the box, but she runs away pretty quick. Tabitha ends up going to the cave entrance by herself, and she builds the Jenga blocks right outside of it. Tabitha starts saying, "I'm here," over and over, and all those little demon kids start showing up all over the place. And we see a bunch of those kids coming towards Tabitha, and they're all saying the same thing: Anghkooey, Anghkooey, Anghkooey. Tabitha tries telling herself she's not afraid as the little kids start approaching her. I guess it's because of what Ethan was saying to Sarah when he confronted her, but she gets really overwhelmed by the ghost kids and she starts screaming, "Don't touch me," over and over and over in terror. Jade shows up and tells her that her nose is bleeding. She asks him if she saw them, but Jade didn't see anything. He didn't see anybody. We see the asshole guy removing some chairs from the bus, and Boyd is watching him. Then Jim shows up to talk to Boyd. Boyd says he doesn't have time for this. Jim says Sarah doesn't look like a psychopath. She looks like a broken kid. Looking around, he's seeing a lot of people that have been pushed to the edge. Jim asks Boyd if he's ever wondered, what if that's the point? Referring to the idea that the point of this place is to push people to the edge. Jim says he had a voice on the radio right as the storm was coming in during the season finale, and whoever it was knew his name. And that guy knew that Tabitha was digging a hole in the basement at that same moment. Jim says he thought he was crazy, but now he knows that people are watching them, that someone is listening in on their conversations. Jim believes it's an experiment because similar things have been done going back to World War II. He doesn't know what they want from us, but if Boyd can give him a more rational explanation, he's willing to listen. They've all got to start working together. And do you know what Boyd says in return to all of that?
I gotta go, Jim.
It's really hard for me to keep supporting Boyd when there's someone like Jim in this show. The entire time he was talking, the only thing I could think of was, wow, thank you, Jim. Thank you for trying to share information. Thank you for trying to communicate. By God, Jim is currently the best character on the show. Anyways, Boyd ends up going to the diner to talk to Mother Chen, and while he's looking for her, the jukebox starts playing and the worms start moving around in his arm. Sarah passes by Ethan while he's playing with the Jenga blocks and smiles at him, but Ethan just looks at her with disgust. Rightfully so. We see the asshole guy sitting on top of the bus with the chairs he was removing in the earlier scene, and his setup looks a lot like Sawyer's. Like, it's crazy, you know? But the episode ends with Boyd telling Mother Chen that he was hoping they could talk. Okay, this was a good episode once again because of how much it was progressing the plot. We find out about the guy in the photograph. We get confirmation that this place existed long before Victor was around. Victor and his people came to town. We find out more about Victor and the person in the photograph, and we get some interesting developments on the symbol itself. And then we have that scene with the children in white, which is really interesting, especially with the word they kept repeating, Anghkooey, Anghkooey, Anghkooey. It really gave me a vibe of kids calling to their mother, but I don't know. But of course, Jim has been really impressive, just like he was in the last episode, because he's the only one trying to connect the dots. I don't know what the writers are planning with Julie, but she's really been lackluster in this entire season. And the one thing that could have given her some depth, i.e., a relationship with Elgin, and therefore connecting Elgin with Ethan, seems to have been replaced with a connection between Sarah and Elgin. Something interesting about Tilly is that almost every scene she's in, it's almost like she's pushing for drama one way or another. It's like a director manipulating the actors without them knowing in order to get better drama for their reality show. And another thing is Donna was right. The only reason Boyd is defending Sarah is because of Abby, not because he wants to find out the truth or to find a way out of Fromville. And we know this because when he had the opportunity for answers, he did not take it. Instead, he told the old man, let's not change the subject. What the fuck was he even thinking? It's like both Victor and Boyd are very different from how they were in the first season. Victor never had any kind of breakdown like this in the first season. Even when he was being threatened, he never had a reaction that was even close to whatever the hell this was. It's like they've infantilized him and made him like a child, even when he wasn't like that in season one. Victor was actually very mature, but he didn't have understanding of social boundaries. Like, for example, when he talked to Julie after drawing her while she was asleep, he wasn't being shy and he had complete confidence when he was speaking or doing anything really, but he didn't understand that behaving like that is socially unacceptable. That's because obviously he didn't have much socialization growing up. No shit. He was alone. He didn't have anybody. But his breakdowns in this episode are the complete opposite of that Victor from season one. And it's the same thing with Boyd. He's very different than he used to be because back then Boyd had a really strong desire for exploration and an understanding of Fromland to gain an understanding of Fromland. But in this season, they've removed that aspect of him and downgraded his character a lot to this sole desire for redemption when he was so much deeper than that in the last season. It feels to me that both Victor and Boyd have been dumbed down by the writers. But regardless of that, Jim and Victor need to team up because both of them are really interested in understanding the mechanics of this world. And we know that because Victor's been measuring the trees and he explored for some time to the point that he eventually discovered the faraway trees. So he's been doing a lot over the decades. He also mentioned that the peaches missing is interesting to him because it never happened before. So he's keeping an eye on these things. Jim wants to know how the electricity works and how the people on the radio are spying on them and how they knew his name and if they collapsed the house and caused the storm somehow. Jade is so obsessed with the symbol that he's ignoring all other information that he can't see a direct connection to the symbol with. That's why James better because he's being open to these other sources of information like what Sarah may have been told by the voices. At the end of the episode, it seems like he agrees with Boyd that Sarah may be helpful. And that's why he's having that conversation with him, but Boyd, he just brushes him off. But anyways, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.